And a good Friday evening and happy Halloween to everybody. Yes, that's right. It is Friday, October the 31st. It is Halloween, and I am back. We have got, let's see, this is another in the line of did I age this properly and how will this hold up? Because sliding in, I thought it would be very Halloweeny. We have from Brasserie Fantôme in, where I wrote it down here. I'm going to butcher the crap out of it. Érezée, Belgium. Érezée, I'm not 100% sure. I do know it is in the French-speaking region. This is a 2012 vintage, 8%. It is a Saison style, and interestingly enough about this one, it's their winter seasonal, but they change the recipe every year, and I don't think anybody remembers exactly what 2012 was, so that's going to be a fun adventure for us to find out together. Now, and actually, did I even try to pronounce this? Yep, there it is. This is the Saison de Érezée, I guess, would that be Hiver? Hiver? I think it would be Hiver. But as you can see, it is corked. I don't have a lot of room here, so I'm going to pause. I'm going to run to the kitchen, get the corkscrew, and I will be right back. I have the return. I am actually shocked that this pulled out, and actually there was a very nice still pop. And as you can see, there is a bit of carbonation. But again, these things are heavily yeasted. Smells perfectly good. So let's see what in the world we're dealing with. 13-year-old, and basically you can almost treat this, I dare say venture almost as a champagne style because it's relatively similar and from the same part, that same kind of general region. And this is going to be, I don't know. We're going to find out. It's going to be a fun one. So, yep, beer is good. So we're going to flip. And then, just in my opinion, my 10 scariest horror movies. Even, maybe not necessarily horror movies per se, but my 10 scariest movies. Coming right at you. Hello, we're back. We have beer. Am I in good frame? I can't remember. I never have the same setup because I just don't pay attention. Okay, so what do we got here? Very dry, kind of tart, and that's about it. Like, if it was bad, you would smell it. You would instantly smell it, and I don't smell anything of that nature. Well, let's see. 8%, it was 2012, so that would be 13 years old, because these usually come out in October. September is around that season for Fantôme. It's probably close to, if not right on, its 13th birthday. So here we go. There's a flavor in there that I wasn't expecting. I'm not sure how to describe it. Needless to say, it's nothing bad. I think it might be one of the ingredients. Does it even say anything? Just a robust flavor Saison style ale. Yeah, there you go. The recipe changes every year, but don't ask what makes them so tasty. The Fantôme never gives up its secrets. Yeah, so doesn't tell me anything of what's in there. But it's a dry, almost, what is that? Almost medicinal. I'm wondering if maybe they aged part of it, or at least this thing in part, in some sort of oak barrel, some sort of wooden barrel, because that's a definite, pun intended with the Fantôme right there, is definite spirit taste to it. That's interesting. But it's very, other than that, flavor goes away quickly. I don't know. We'll see how that develops as we run through the list. Now these ones, I'm going to say this is my list because I have a weird criteria. And I was speaking with a friend of mine and she suggested some movies, and then she also said that or hinted at the fact that I really have to factor in how it was the first time I saw it and how much it freaked me out. Like, looking back at some of the quote-unquote horror movies from the 80s and 90s, they aren't that scary. In fact, they're just, most of them are kind of not good. But it's just the fact of how they made you feel at the time. So, here's the Zach 10 list, and then at the end I have 5 honorable mentions just for the overly creepy factor. We have to start off with one of the OGs. Night of the Living Dead, 1968, from George A. Romero. It's the movie that birthed the zombies, without question. They had zombies in movies in the past, but this was the first time that they turned into what we now consider zombies, the slow, shambling, flesh-eating ghouls, which interestingly is how they referred to them in that movie. They never used the word zombie. It was either ghouls or those things. And as I was reading, when they were pitching the idea, and they settled on the fact that they were going to use zombies. So, like, again, I think it was 1943, the Bela Lugosi movie White Zombie was a thing, but so zombies as an entity had been around for a long time in various folklores and mythologies, but they determined that to have these creatures, what would be the most disturbing thing that a human could do? And the writers and producers and whatnot all settled on cannibalism. Thus was born the idea of the flesh-eating zombie. It is, I would dare say, a cult classic. Commercial flop at the beginning, so they said, but it has done incredibly well since. Adjusted for inflation from 1968 to now, on, where was it? A $978,000 budget, which is essentially what it was in 1968. I think it was $30,000. That movie has grossed, again, adjusting for inflation, $257.3 million, which works out to roughly 263 times its original budget. Not bad for a very, very low budget, very, quickly shot movie. Oh, and by the way, the zombies, that cemetery, they're coming to get you, Barbara. That is Evans City Cemetery in Evans City, Pennsylvania, the birthplace of the zombies. The farmhouse, the ill-fated farmhouse, was in Zelienople, but that, God, it collapsed a long time ago. I think not long after that movie was actually filmed. The farmhouse was, in fact, abandoned and slated for demolition anyway, which really added to that creep factor. But that's one. And one little interesting fact, another one. Obviously, it's in the public domain because they simply didn't register it, but it came out, I think, October the 1st, 1968. November the 1st is when the movie rating system came out. So essentially, Night of the Living Dead was one of the last big movies to be released without having a rating. Now, let's jump forward because I'm going to go all around. And this movie, I'm sorry, if you haven't seen it, it's terrifying. Event Horizon from 1997 by Paul W.S. Anderson. Terrifying movie. Absolutely terrifying movie. Essentially, space crew sent out, and I'm not going to spoil it anything, but although I do have to say, like 1997, if it's a spoiler, that's kind of on you. Essentially, the Event Horizon is a ship that suddenly materializes in space after coming back from, I think it was supposed to be in Neptune. It's been a while since I've seen the movie because it's just terrifying. And, the rescue crew goes aboard and they found out that something else came back with it. That shot right there, that of Sam Neill, if you've seen the movie, you can hear it. Where we're going, we don't need eyes. Absolutely terrifying. And the theatrical release was 96 minutes long, which was kind of the standard for, the 80s and 90s. However, originally, Paul Anderson made the original director's cut was 130 minutes. The studio demanded it be cut down, so he cut out a lot of the movie. And then all of a sudden, because nobody expected the movie to do well, all of a sudden it took off, especially through DVD sales. So then the studio, along with Paul Anderson, decided that they wanted to restore the director's cut. Wouldn't that have been great? Here's the problem. After the film that was cut wasn't stored properly, and the overwhelming majority of it is either damaged or missing. What could have been? What could have been for a director's cut of Event Horizon? Scary, scary, scary. Number 3, and this one has a very personal tie, and I know my dad would be on me if I didn't mention it. Silence of the Lambs, 1991, by Jonathan Demme. I think Demme, D-E-M-M-E, I'm not actually sure how his name's pronounced. Became the third and most recent, so still hasn't happened much since, film to win in the Big Five category. That's Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor, Best Actress, and Best Adapted Screenplay. And technically, it remains the only horror movie to actually win Best Picture. Now, we all know what the plot of Silence of the Lambs is. You know, Hannibal Lecter, Clarice Starling, Buffalo Bill, this and that. That right there. Not so much paying attention to Sir Anthony Hopkins as Hannibal Lecter. Look at the background. That final scene when he is in that cell in that very ornate-looking ballroom. That room is at Soldiers and Sailors Memorial Hall and Museum in Pittsburgh. And in the movie, if you watch, you can see the FBI agents coming in, and they're walking by all these cases with various suits of armor. Well, that's the museum part of it downstairs. And also, I think it would have been June of 2000, was where I had my high school graduation at Soldiers and Sailors, right upstairs, because that is an actual event space that you can still rent if you're in Pittsburgh and in the market for that. I'm not sponsored by them, obviously. I'm just stating fact. That is where that pivotal scene in the end scenes of Silence of the Lambs was shot. Pittsburgh is just ripe for horror movies because, Zelienople and Evans City, not that far outside of Pittsburgh. Soldiers and Sailors, right downtown Pittsburgh. Now I'm making more sense, aren't I? Speaking of making more sense, let's have a little bit of the Fantôme. Aroma hasn't changed. In fact, it's actually just stayed right where it is. Okay, all right, it's changing. Yeah. I'm thinking there's something in there. Maybe one more sip, but it's one of those I'm on the verge of maybe having it, but I don't want to say it just in case I'm absolutely wrong. Like I've never done that before on the internet. Number 4, and now we're going to go into a category of movies that I think is the scariest because, let's be honest, unlike Night of the Living Dead, zombies are not going to rise from the grave and come for us. Unlike Event Horizon, we're not, whatever evil was attached to that ship is not going to come. The mummy is not going to come. There are no vampires. There are no werewolves. But these categories, like Silence of the Lambs, they're exceedingly terrifying because they are real. And movie number 4 I'm picking, it's a movie I've seen many a time, and it's a very good one. Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer from 1986. It was by John McNaughton, and it was the film debut role of Michael Rooker, who did terrifyingly good job. Essentially, the story summed up as this. Main character, Henry, he of the Portrait of a Serial Killer, played by Michael Rooker, is a drifting mass murderer who goes around the United States doing all sorts of, serial killer, mass murdery type stuff. He meets up with his old prison buddy right there, and his prison buddy's sister. He then lives with them, falls in love with the sister, friend goes bye-bye, and then ultimately you're led to think maybe the friend's sister also goes bye-bye. But that is why those movies are terrifying. And not like just the gore slasher Eli Roth nonsense. I'm talking legitimate, serial killers, psychotic humans that don't have any sort of special powers. Like, there is no Freddy Krueger, there is no Jason Voorhees. This is And I think, honestly, Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer, loosely based on the life of a couple of criminals. They have argued maybe it's not, but, where there's smoke, there's fire, as they say. Now we're getting halfway, and now we're going to get to some classic stuff. Bam, right there. The Hills Have Eyes, the original one, from 1977, directed by Wes Craven. Let's just break it down. You probably know the story. Suburban family, the mother being Dee Wallace, big fan of Dee Wallace. She was also in Critters, by the way, and many other movies. They're driving through the Nevada desert, car breaks down, and naturally they are targeted by a family of, the best way to put it, psychopathic cannibal savages. One of the lead actors, the guy in the movie poster, very unique-looking individual, Michael Berryman, great character actor, and I had to write it down because I can never remember the medical condition he has. Let's see if I can get this right in one. Probably not. It's hypohydrotic ectodermal dysplasia. And essentially what that means is that's why he has that very distinct look, but also it's a very rare genetic mutation that is says that the person is unable to produce, it's hair, sweat glands, and fingernails. Now, they actually shot The Hills Have Eyes in the desert. Let's give it up for Michael Berryman, because to be out in that desert without the ability to sweat, that's committing to the bit. And honestly, that guy is a legend, absolute legend in the horror movie circles, just because, one, his look, he's very easily identifiable, and so many of the big horror movies have him attached to it. And again, you think of stuff like this, like, oh, it couldn't happen. Why couldn't it? Why couldn't it happen? These people aren't radioactive mutants. These people aren't supernatural monsters. These people are just really disturbed individuals. In all honesty, I think that's a lot more scary than the idea of the mummy coming out of a tomb, because that ain't going to happen. But you never know who you're going to run across. I'm not trying to be, Captain Downer, but, that to me is truly what makes a movie, quote-unquote, scary. And by the way, for any of the modern horror stuff, jump scares are not horror. Jump scares are a cheap out to get a reaction. Video games, horror movies, they all do the same thing, and I don't know. I don't buy it. We're at the halfway point, and this one, because I had come up with the first 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, 5. Down to The Hills Have Eyes, where I just finished. I'm talking to a friend, and I said, look, here's what I was trying to do. And she sends me a GIF of, and I didn't get that actual picture, but it made me go, my God, I would not have thought of that. So we're going to go to 1986. We're looking at The Fly. David Cronenberg's The Fly. This is a remake. The original was from 1958. But it is starring one of Hollywood's greatest fashion plates, an absolute Pittsburgh legend, the man I've been searching for in the Magic the Gathering Jurassic Park thing, Jeff the Goldblum, in one of his early roles. I think you should probably know the story of The Fly. Either you've maybe seen the original or you've seen some sort of reference to it. I know The Simpsons did it in one of their Treehouse of Horrors. Essentially, Jeff Goldblum and Gina Davis actually is in that movie as well. He's a scientist, and he's experimenting with these teleportation pods. And then he realizes, okay, I can kind of alter it so I can get a better idea of human genetics, because there are some unfortunate experiments that don't go well because he hasn't quite figured it out yet. Honestly, we know it wasn't, but that poor baboon in the beginning part of the movie. But ultimately, he goes through it himself, but his DNA is fused with a fly that was in the pod with him, and he didn't realize it until he began to change. The movie is just disturbing. It's just unnerving. It's one of those that makes your skin crawl. There's like the arm wrestling scene, which I don't like to think about. And if you know how flies actually eat anything, there is a whole lot of that going on. And then ultimately, he sheds the Goldblum mortal coil and turns into the full-blown fly monster. It is just, it's just off-putting. And Zach Corp, by the way, does not take any responsibility for anything. By the way, a list of all the movies I'm going to talk about will be down below in case anybody's bored. But again, Zach Corp will take absolutely no responsibility for anything. Beer time. Now let's see if this is the sip that unlocks the mystery. It's smoke. It's smoke, but it's peat. It's peat smoke. That's why it has that weird flavor. This thing, at some point, or some portion of it, at some point, was in a Scotch barrel. I would bet the farm on that one. Yeah, that's that weird medicinal smoky flavor. It's peat, and if you don't know, peat is the peat moss over in Scotland and Ireland, and they roast it, or they burn it and roast the malts over it to give it that really distinctive Scotch smoky taste. That is exactly what I'm tasting. Wow. I'm shocked that number one, I figured that out, and number two, after 13 years, it's honestly still there. And now, since we kind of talked about Night of the Living Dead and the beginning of everything, this one is going to be kind of the beginning of a lot of things. This is the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and you can tell it's the original because chainsaw was spelled as two words. It's from 1974 by Tobe Hooper, and you know the story. That story inspired so many horror movies, so many slashers, so many slasher monsters. But again, this is terrifying because it was just a real family. Now, truth be told, back in the day, because Hollywood still does this, it's called lying. They said that the story itself was based on true events. No, it was not. However, Leatherface himself, played by the late great Gunnar Hansen, and by the way, that scene in Texas Chainsaw Massacre when he cuts her thumb at the dinner table, he actually took the knife and ran it across her finger because they couldn't get the cut to look good. So she pulled him aside and said, "Look, this is how we're going to do it." And that's the final cut, no pun intended, that they used in the movie. That aside, and there's that picture that everybody knows when him running after the truck and then just going ham in the cornfield with the chainsaw. Leatherface himself was kind of loosely based off of, and I know this guy's a very, very popular figure right now because of the Netflix thing, Ed Gein. I know a lot of people that have watched that had no idea who Ed Gein was and then were very disturbed. Yeah. Because, yeah, that's all I'm going to say about Ed Gein. But Texas Chainsaw Massacre, 1, it's a classic. 2, the fact that it was just a bunch of people could very well happen, especially, anywhere. It doesn't even necessarily have to be small town. It could be a large city. You never know. Crazier things have happened in much bigger cities than wherever that was. Now, I have always had a fascination with international movies, so anything non-American, especially in the horror genre when I was big into them. And I found there was a lot of countries that really did them well. Japan does really good horror movies. South Korea does really good horror movies. Australia has a couple really, really decent horror movies from late 70s, early 80s. Patrick is one of them. That's an interesting little bonus throw-in. But Italy also, and this one is an Italian one. This is 1977. The movie is called Suspiria. It is by Dario Argento. Now, to give a quick rundown, and they remade it, I can't remember when, probably within the last 10 years or so, maybe. But they remade it, but I would the remake wasn't bad, but if you really want to watch it, I would recommend watching the original one from 1977. Essentially, I'm just going to read you the blurb because I was trying to think of the best way to actually describe this movie, so I figured I would just go to the summary. An American newcomer to a prestigious German ballet academy comes to realize that the school is a front for something sinister amid a series of grisly murders. That's something? Witchcraft. It's witches. I'm just saying. Witches, the occult, Satanism, that whole spiel. Very creepy, very unnerving, and it's a cult thing, which, I mean, we all know. Cults happen, unfortunately. Initially, because of Argento's earlier work, including his directorial debut 7 years prior, I think it was 7 years prior, The Bird with the Crystal Plumage from 1970, people just dismissed this movie. They're like, this is terrible. How could he do that? He's fallen off. But then, as with anything, as time goes by, you go back and you look at it again, and now all of a sudden they're like, no, this was something different. And now they've essentially said that Suspiria in general, or more to the point, Suspiria was probably one of the first to define a genre, that genre being Euro horror. So the European-style horror movies that Americans had been doing for a long time at that level. I'm not going to say that because there were some great old silent European horror movies. Fantastic silent European horror movies. The Golem, Haxan. There's some great ones. But Suspiria is just, again, another classic, though weirdly it's not very well dubbed because it was 1977, kind of low budget, but it has its charm and it is what it is. Also, it stars one of my favorite character actors, Udo Kier. I'm a big fan of Udo Kier. He's been in a ton of stuff, and I enjoy him in pretty much everything that I've seen him in. And then this is the one where I said, my friend said, how did it make you feel at the time? And I'm just going to blow it by saying what she said. She said, in all honesty, the first time you saw Jaws, how did it make you feel? And she was absolutely right. Because Jaws, that came out in 1975, based off a novel the year prior, and the film was made by Steven Spielberg, terrified me. Like, terrified a lot of people to the point where they didn't want to go into the water. But there was the downside that both the author of the book, Peter Benchley, and Steven Spielberg, let's be honest, they knew it was going to happen, but, you know, they didn't really care at the time. It turned people against the shark population, led to massive culling of sharks just because they were so scared. And, you know, they later said, well, you know, that was not our intention. Well, you know, good intentions, bad intentions, it doesn't matter. That's what happened. But that aside, Bruce the Shark, as you saw from that one there, I've seen Bruce the Shark. He now lives at the Academy Museum of Motion Pictures in Los Angeles. Boom, that very badly lit picture right there, that's the one I took when I was at the museum, and I got to see Bruce just hanging out there, literally. That's where Bruce lives. But Jaws, in all honesty, looking back on it for what it was, what it's done for, you know, the ocean environment notwithstanding, terrified a lot of people because shark attacks happen quite often. And then they were saying, well, now people are worried, could sharks be in Lake Michigan? Yeah, they could. Bull sharks, not great whites, bull sharks. We all know that. There have been so many reports of bull sharks up the Mississippi River and as far inland as Ohio. So sharks are terrifying, but they're beautiful, majestic, and don't deserve to be killed just because some guy made a movie out of it. That's all I'm saying. And the final one, and this was an homage to the woman I was talking to because I know how badly this movie affected her. And normally, sequels are what they are, but in this case, this one is particularly interesting. This is Creepshow 2 from 1987, directed by Michael Gornick. The original one, Creepshow, the first, I think, was 1982, and it was directed by George Romero. It's a compilation horror/comedy kind of thing, but it is creepy when it wants to be, hence Creepshow. It's based off of Stephen King books. And Creepshow, it had three segments. There was Old Chief Woodenhead, but the two in particular, this one right there, number one, The Raft, that was the end result of The Raft. It's unnerving. Like, people are trapped on a floating raft in the middle of a lake, and they're surrounded by an ooze. That's what happens when the ooze gets you. And then the third part of it is called The Hitchhiker, and it's disturbing. Like, that's the stuff like the urban legends, like, and on the door handle was the hook for a hand. Well, basically, woman driving home after cheating on her husband runs over somebody, but that somebody didn't go away. Let's put it that way. Very, very creepy. Very, very unnerving. Yeah. Good luck. Yeah, good luck sleeping tonight. No, actually, I'm looking at my honorable mentions. Why did I do this? The things I do. Beer time. That's 100% what it is. That is aged in some sort of Scotch barrel. A peaty one, so maybe an Islay Scotch? I don't know. It's good, though. And you still taste that weedy kind of tart, bitter twang of the Saison itself. Man, I'm not half bad at aging beer by simply putting it somewhere and completely forgetting about it. Let's hear it for accidental winning. But those are, in my opinion, 10 of the scariest movies I've ever seen, because the majority of them could happen, have happened, and the ones that can't are just iconic. Event Horizon, Night of the Living Dead, The Fly, obviously that wouldn't happen. But the rest of them, or The Raft, from Creepshow too, that ain't happening, but a lot of these are plausible, and I think, honestly, that is the scariest part. And then the honorable mentions, there were 5 of them, not because of the movies. The movies themselves sometimes were kind of schlocky, but there are certain scenes right there. The Ghoulies, yeah, I'm just showing the movie poster because, yeah, they came out of the toilet. I checked my toilet for a while after watching watching Ghoulies. Also, the film debut of Mariska Hargitay, by the way, in case anybody was curious. Then I want to throw my love to something that most people wouldn't think about as horror, because it had supernatural elements, but not horror per se. And that would be right there, Twin Peaks, the original television series that ran from 1990 to 1991. The remake they did, I think, in 2017 was kind of adjacent to it, but not quite. Didn't really follow the plot. But I'm going to go back to the original 2 seasons, 90 and 91, because of that guy, Bob. I couldn't find any really good pictures of Bob, but if you've ever seen Twin Peaks, you know just what a terrifying, creepy monster Bob is. Like, I was checking behind doors for Bob after I watched Twin Peaks about 10 years ago for the first time, by the way. So it wasn't like I was a kid watching it when it came out. I watched it much later. Bob's creepy. Speaking of creepy, how about this one? Return to Oz from 1985. Yeah. You know why that's terrifying? 1, look at the movie poster. 2, weirdly, it's a Disney movie. These things right here, the Wheelers, they are just off-putting. Off-putting. Ooh, don't like them. Get that picture out of there. It's already out of there. It wasn't that long. And then 2, that basically says that the generation that a lot of us are in, you just can't bother with anything. I present to you 2 movies. Number 1, boom, right there, Watership Down from 1978, the British animated one. I will say nothing else, because if you've seen it, you know. That is all I will say. And the exact same for this one. Coming 4 years later, bam, The Secret of NIMH, 1982. It's one of those, if you know, you know. That, I don't know. I could have done a lot more, obviously. I could have broken it down and, done specific, like the 10 scariest, plausible ones, monster ones. But I thought just a general overview for Halloween. And hopefully your Halloween is going well. Has gone well, I should say. It's, well after 10 o'clock here on the East Coast, so everybody will have stopped trick-or-treating, but West Coast people, hope all is going well. Yeah. Scary movies. And to me, like I say, the fact that something could actually happen is a lot scarier than something that there's absolutely no chance of happening. So we are going to... Oh, this is really good. I'm going to go over and see Aaron in a little bit. And finish off my Fantôme de... Let's see if I can pronounce it. Oh, it just says Hiver, but it's the Fantôme Érezée, I believe. Oh, that is just nice. One more sip. Yeah, the more it warms up, the more that Scotch flavor comes out, and I am a big fan of that. So that is going to do it. I hope you had a great Halloween. Happy Halloween. Hopefully you've eaten lots of candy. And don't forget, make sure to check all the kids' candy, because the one year I know they found the Balrog, the Middle-earth Balrog in somebody's Snickers bar, so just be wary. Tomorrow is Saturday, college game day. I moved everything around because Halloween. And tomorrow we did the Big 12 last week, so now tomorrow we are going to be looking at all 18 teams of the Big 10. That's going to be fun because there is a lot of really cool trophies in there. And now, because this is the French one, I will butcher French once again, and I will say to you, my friends, if you're having one along with me, à ta santé, meaning to your health. To my health indeed. So that's it. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a great rest of the evening. Be safe. If you're coming back or going to a Halloween party, just be careful, be safe. And I will leave you with this parting thought. If you ever consider nightmares, and this is actually weirdly Halloween-y related too, I just realized that now. God, I'm good when I want to be. The idea of nightmares, essentially it's while we're sleeping, our brains are making up stories and then getting scared of them. Have a good night, everybody.